Introductions.
Okay, I'll start it. Start recording.
Hi, now you can start admitting people.
Yeah.
Namaskar. I'm very happy to welcome all of you to this 18th webinar of the Literary and Cultural Forum of AIWC Trivandrum Main Branch. We have been having these webinars on the first Friday of every month, and this is the 18th in the series. We have had some very eminent guests and covered a lot of interesting topics. Today, as we near International Environment Day, we are focusing on nature, specifically on living species and biodiversity. At all meetings and webinars on the environment, we usually talk about what has gone wrong, how humans have contributed to the degradation of the environment, and what we should do now. Basically focusing on the negative things. So we thought we must make a shift, and especially for the children and the young adults here, we want to focus on the fascinating world of nature. If we explore the fascinating world of nature, the various species, their habitats, and their lives, then we become aware of the wonderful pattern of nature and how each species is important to the well-being of the earth. And this, I think, will make people more sensitive to the need for protection of environment. And that is why we have selected this. We had an earlier lecture on the birds of the Silent Valley by Dr. Mukesh. And that actually gave us a new perspective of the whole thing. We all had heard about Silent Valley and about the iconic struggle for preserving that Silent Valley area. But only now, we had a very vague idea only, but after watching this, we knew specifically what is at stake and what those eminent men and women who fought for this have saved for us. So similarly, we hope that by focusing on biodiversity and on the lives of the different species, we'll be able to encourage children, young adults, and in fact, all of us to appreciate the need for conserving, protecting the environment. We have a very interesting and versatile person as our chief guest today, Dr. Kalesh Sadasivan. He, as he puts it himself, is a plastic surgeon by profession and a naturist by passion. We hear a lot about multitasking, but Dr. Kalesh is someone who has taken it to a totally different level altogether. Dr. Kalesh, he is MS in general surgery, MCS in plastic reconstructive surgery, and is an assistant professor at the Government Medical College in Trivandrum. That itself is sufficient to keep a person busy. But Dr. Kalesh manages to take time out to indulge his passion, chasing butterflies, exploring anthills, studying dragonflies, and the list goes on. This is not just as a casual hobby. He has published several serious scientific papers on his explorations. He and his team have been credited with discovery of new species of ants and butterflies. We begin to wonder how he fits in so much into his life. whether God has given him 48 hours to the day to or 24 hours, because that is the volume of work that goes into his achievements. We welcome Dr. Kalesh Sadasivan to AIWC and to this webinar. And over to you, Dr. Kalesh. We are all very eagerly waiting to hear you.
Thank you. So, a warm good evening to all. Am I audible?
Yes.
Okay.
Please go on.
Basically, before I start, I'll just give a few words of introduction about my NGO. So, I work in an NGO called TNHS. So, we started this in 2010. So, this is basically a heterogeneous group, around 15 to 20 people from different backgrounds. Some are students, some are engineers, some are doctors, some are businessmen, some teachers, a lot of people. So we came together on a common platform for nature conservation, the primary idea being popularization of science and conservation through publications. So generally what people do is they study stuff, take photographs and forget about it, but then we take it further. We publish papers, we discover new species and do taxonomy and all those kind of work. So since the last 10, 12 years, we have published around 16 new species to science and authored at least 30 to 40 scientific papers. This largely leads to conservation, especially in the southern Western Ghats, including sanctuaries and national parks lying across Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka. So we have been having a good time in the forest, some risky time as well, but then it's really interesting and we are all passionate about this common stuff. So I basically started with birds in around 1998 while I was in the school. And then I progressed to butterflies and birds got exhausted. Then butterflies grew interesting. I was studying plants, then slowly frogs and reptiles and stuff. Then progressed to cicadas, ants, and odonets. Now, presently, I'm working on Butterflies of Kerala, a book, which will be my lifetime contribution to the study. And presently, I'm concentrating on cicadas and ants. So this ant work is actually not my cup of tea, but then I happened to come to this to help one of my friends. So his name is Manoj Vembayam. He is basically a mechanic in KSRTC. So this guy doesn't have a biology background, but then he goes around studying stuff so passionately that I had to get into this to help him. And that's how I got into ants. So we together do this stuff. And in the presentation, which involves around 130 slides, most of the pictures, at least around 99%, are taken by either me or by Manoj using specialized lenses called macro lenses. So I'll be taking you into the world of ants with the state of Kerala as an example. So let's move into the topic. I'll be sharing the screen. So if you have any questions, you can write it down the chat box. And if somebody can read it out, that'll be very nice. So I can answer it. If you have any emergent questions, you can even ask through the discussion. But then I'd prefer asking questions at the last because you can just finish this stuff and be having a good discussion at the last. So I'll just start my screen share. Is the screen visible?
Yes, we can see very well.
Yes.
Audio is also clear?
Yes.
Okay, so let's start. So we all have heard about ants, and I don't think anybody would have realized that whatever individual ants you see in your daily life are all females. So it's a female dominated system. For all practical purposes, whatever ant you see is a she. So giving that logic, the concept of ant men, that film is absolutely wrong. And the men, actually the male ants, they come out during only the mating period, that is May, June, before the monsoons, and then they die off. So practically the whole world of ants is run by the female called the gyne or the queen, and it is dominated by chemical signaling. So come to the first slide. So you can see two sisters who are actually, I call this picture the kiss. This actually got an award in one of the competitions. So this is actually not a kiss. What these sisters are doing are they are exchanging the food. They are sharing food mouth to mouth. This phenomena is called prophylaxis. This is one of the reasons why ants have superb resource management strategies. So once an ant finds a food, it doesn't carry everything to the colony, but then it shares with stuff share the stuff with the sisters she finds on the way. So this is how resources are managed in the ant colony. So let's go into the contents of today's topic. So the question is, why do we study ants? I'll also be dealing with the history of ant studies in Kerala, and diversity, a word about the state of art of this ant studies, lacuna and knowledge gaps, and then further steps how to go about this. So if you look at the origin of ants, so they actually dominated the world since the time of the dinosaurs. So they originated around 140 to 160 million years ago when dinosaurs were dominating the world. And the classifying, if you go to the taxonomy, they come under Formicidae. So this is very closely related to wasps. Okay. So why do ants dominate this world? There are two reasons for it. And interestingly, these reasons are the ones that give them parallelisms to the human world as well. So whenever I discuss about the ants, you can even see that some of these are even applicable to human societies. So the two reasons why they have dominated the world is that, one, they have parental care. So parental care is one of the things which dominates the colony, and which makes sure that the colony survives. The second thing is division of labor. So in a colony, there are numerous castes which are entrusted with different kind of jobs. So this division of labor and parental care or eusociality are the two factors which help them dominate the world. So if you look at this statement, 25% of all the animal weight on Earth is actually given by ants. It could be an overstatement, but then probably it is also right. So why do we study ants? There are actually two reasons. One is they are ecological indicators. So what are these indicator species? So there are certain species, like for example, butterflies or frogs or odonites or ants. So these are very small species who are very sensitive to even the tiniest change in the environment. The rise and fall in the humidity or the temperature, like global warming. So this can affect these taxa much more prominently and evidently. And this change can be monitored, and this is easily monitored because these things are ubiquitous, they are found everywhere. So once we realize that this change affects them first, you can get a time known as a lead time. So this lead time is a time when these things will start to act upon higher organisms like humans. So we can get a lead time to save our own species. That is why we are looking at this as indicators. The second thing is they are ubiquitous. They are everywhere, but then whatever we know about them is really minuscule. Come to the ant ecology, how the ant or the organism interacts with the environment. So if you see an ant, so you should not be thinking about the single ant you see as the worker. You should be thinking about an ant colony. So whatever is happening in the ant world concerns the ant colony, which is something which we call the superorganism, rather than the single ant which you see. So it's just like a huge organism. The colony itself is the organism. That is how it works. So just like any other organisms or human society, there is a founding phase, there's a growing phase, and the reproductive phase. So we'll go through it. In the founding phase, what happens is a queen or a guy, she settles down, lays her eggs, and then she guards it. So if you see in the first picture, there's an ant, red ant, it's called Oikophila or Neer in Malayalam. So this is a queen ant. So she has come and she has laid some eggs and she's guarding it. So during the guarding time, she cannot actually go out and forage or get food. So what she does is she liquefies the wing muscles, which is useless at this time, and then uses it to nourish herself. And when the first batch of eggs hatch, she feeds these first batch of workers with this secretion, this proteinaceous fluid, which is actually a derivative of the ailery muscle, which is the wing muscle, which is liquefied. So once the first batch of workers are nourished and they come out, as you see in the second picture, you can see the queen ant, which is a larger ant. There's a small worker ant, and this small worker ant is actually caring for the pupa. So she fed this worker, and now this worker is ready to go out and forage for the queen. And this worker also cares for the next generation, like this pupa. This is called eusociality and parental care. This is one of the reasons why ants have dominated the world. The second phase is the growing phase. So you can see that the colony has multiplied. There are numerous workers. There is a lot of ant pupae, larvae. So this is the multiplicative phase or the growing phase. This usually happens during the pre-monsoons, like for example in the April, May, June season. Come to the reproductive phase. This is the final phase where the colony has matured. You can see that in the center of the picture is a huge ant with a huge thorax. This is the queen. There is a tiny ant with wings, which has only the mouth part which is highly reduced. This is the male ant. The others are workers. So The two winged individuals. The huge one is the queen. This is the second. The small one is the male, and the others are workers. So males come only during the reproductive phase. So practically, you will find them only during few months of the year, and rest of the time, the whole ant world is dominated by females. And this solitary queen, she determines what each worker does, what the colony does, what the fate of the colony is using chemical signals or pheromones. Coming to ant nest, where they live. So just like humans, there are interesting ways of ants making their colonies. Some ants live underground. This is called a subterranean nest. Some ants live under substrate, like under rocks or wood. That is called terrestrial nest on the ground. Some are lignicolous. Lignicolous means they live inside live plant cavities or dead trees. Some are arboreal. For example, your weaver ant. They build carton nest using silk from the larvae. And there are some ants which doesn't have any nest or colony, just moves out from one place to another. They are temporary ants or temporary nests. So this is an example of an arboreal nest. So these ants have made a nest using the leaves and chewed up vegetable matter. It's called a carton nest. It's a very common species, Polyrhachis, that is seen in your gardens. This is an arboreal nest. This is an example of a lignicolous nest. So the ants have made themselves at home inside wood and inside cavities of plants. So in the center of the slide, you can see a green plant with a huge swollen stem. So inside the stem, there's a colony of an ant called Iridomyrmex. This picture was taken in Kaveri Wildlife Sanctuary. This is called a myrmicophyte. Myrmico means ant, phyte means plant. So this is an ant plant. So in India, studies on ant plants have been really minuscule, and probably somebody should take this up. So this is an ant plant where the ant gives nourishment to the plant and the plant gets protection from other predators. This is how it works. This lignicolous nest. There are certain ants which nest just under stuff you find on the ground, for example, under rock or wood. This is terrestrial nest. Some ants go underground. So these are the subterranean ants. They live underground. Then there are ants which have temporary nests. This is the world famous army ant. If you go to any forest in India, you will find army ants on the ground. They'll be foraging constantly on the ground. They doesn't have any colony, any nest. So they just constantly move out with the queens, the pupae, and the egg. And on the go, they feed on everything, including if you find any insect, they'll just feed on them. So that is how army ants work. This is called leptogenous or the army ant. Coming to feeding. So what do ants eat? So you can see parallelisms in human society as well. Some are generalists, they can eat anything. Some are seed harvesters, they are just vegetarians, they don't do anything else, they just eat seeds. Some are preferably feeding on nectar, could be plant nectar or from invertebrates like insects. Some are scavengers, they eat on dead and decomposing stuff. And then there are specialized predators, which is an interesting group of ants. We'll come to them. So if you see this picture, there's a black ant attending to a white structure. So this white thing is an aphid. So if you think that animal husbandry evolved in human societies more beforehand than in ant society, that is wrong, because ants had actually used them since millions of years before humans were even born on the earth. So this ant is actually using this just like we use goats and cows for milk. So this aphid will produce a milky substance which is taken up by the ant, and the ant gives them protection. That is how it works. This is an ant called Chromatogaster. If you have a terrace garden, you might be seeing this ant attending to these aphids, which is actually detrimental to your plants as well. Once I was going to hospital and I accidentally spilled milk tea on the ground. And when I reached back, this is the scene I saw. These are tiny ants called ghost ants, so they can feed on anything. So if you see your desktop, they'll be crawling all over dust. Sometimes they crawl on your body, but then you cannot see them because they are so tiny. You will feel them. Hence, they are known as ghost ants. These are one of the tiniest ants, scientifically called Tapinoma. Then there are seed harvesters. So we will think that humans invented farming. No, that is wrong. So this was actually harvesting and stuff, even drying the seeds, cutting it, and everything was done by ants much before humans came into this world. So these ants are known as harvester ants. Farming for honey or harvesting of nectar, that was also done in ant colonies much more before humans evolved. So these two ants, they are actually milking one of the scale insects for honey or nectar. Then there are ants which feed on anything like dead ants and other insects. These are scavengers. Interestingly, these scavengers are the ones which are ubiquitous. They are all over the world. They are tramp ants or colonizers or exotic ants. These are the invaders that come from different parts of the world and colonize different parts of the world, especially in the tropics. And these are the scavengers. There are certain ants which are specialized predators, so they feed on specific stuff. You can see that this ant doesn't have eyes. She is blind, and she is hunting a small centipede. So this ant is called the Dracula ant, scientifically known as Stigmatoma. She specifically feeds on geomorphous centipedes. So they are centipedes which are bioluminescent and they live underground. So they specifically feed on these centipedes. This ant is called a Dracula ant for a particular reason. I'll come to that a little later. So this was the first slide I showed you. It's the spirit of sharing, that is prophylaxis. You share everything what you get with your fellow beings and siblings, scientifically known as prophylaxis. Now, how do ants communicate? So as a child, you might have seen ants walking on the wall, and you might have tried to break the group by drawing a line across it. That is how the pheromone trail gets disrupted. But then an adventurous ant will come and she will go across it, and then the trail is re-established. So there are three ways how ants communicate. One is by touch. You can see the antennal tapping. So they communicate by tapping the antennae. That is one of the communication skills. Second is chemical, using pheromones. And the third is visual cues. So ant trail is a chemical form of communication. So if you see, you can see a black ant, it's a monomorphic species. She is taking a small seed to her colony. So if you look carefully at the picture, you will see white powdery substance. So this is actually a salt which has formed by cross reaction of the pheromone with the chemical in this red soil. This picture was taken from Bangalore. So generally these pheromones are invisible, but then due to particular chemical reaction, it has become visible. So for many months, this trail was going on. This is an ant trail. This is how they move around. So using the antennae, they tap and they see which way the trail goes, right or left. Now coming to division of labor, which is one of the major reasons why ants dominated. So you can see that in the picture, there are at least 5 or 6 ants. Look at the size of the head. This is a huge headed ant. This is a small headed ant. And sometimes you might feel that these are different species, but in fact, they are not. They are in fact the same species and they are from the same colony. So what happens is, in the same colony of this ant, there are 4 or 5 castes. So each caste has a particular job. One caste is given with the job of finding the seed. The second caste will go and cut it because the mouth parts are modified for cutting the seed. The third one will carry the seed to the colony. The fourth will cut open the seed and harvest the carbohydrate. The last will take out the husk and throw it outside. So these are the ways they actually divide the labor. And this is one of the reasons why they are functionally successful and they have dominated the world. This is called division of labor, a major criteria. It is also shared with the human societies. Coming to farming. So as I told you, farming was not invented by humans. So they were there millions of years before even humans evolved. So this picture is taken from the internet. You can see on the top part, this ant is called the leaf cutter ant. They cut out leaves, they chew them, and then they cultivate mushrooms on it. Then there are ants in the Australian outback, which actually store honey in their abdomens. These are the honey pot ants. So, and they mastered honey cultivation, mushroom cultivation, animal husbandry, and farming. Coming to ant-plant interaction, just like humans ranch cattle, ants have their own group of cattle known as aphids. So these are actually enemies of farmers and cultivators because these aphids actually suck out your plant juices and kill the plants. So ants actually farm them. They help them, protect them, and then carry them around each plant. So this is how ants interact with plants through aphids. So animal husbandry is through ants. Some ants prefer floral nectar. So they just go into flower and feed on floral nectar. Some ants actually go in for extra floral nectaries. These are actually traps by the plant where they give ants food packets and other secretions through specialized glands called extra floral nectaries. So the ants will be always around this plant. What does the plant gain by this? It gets protection from predators. So the ant will be always along with the plant and the plant will get protection. This is how it works, called extra floral nectary. Now, how ant and arthropods interact. So this particular bug is called a membracid bug, or a tree hopper, or a plant hopper. Or so this is how they farm for them. They tend to them just like we tend our goats and cows. They care for them and they move about having the nectar from their abdomen. This is a weaver ant which is attending to a scale insect. Just like I told in the previous slide, it is attending to the scale insect. The scale insect gets protection and the ant gets nectar. So this is a question I usually ask in offline classes. I would ask them to guess what is happening. I'll just quickly tell you what this is. So you can see a group of ants sitting on a caterpillar. So this caterpillar is feeding on that leaf. So people will usually answer that this is a predation or the ants are actually killing the caterpillar. In fact, it is not. So the caterpillar has a unique mechanism of attracting these ants. So they use acoustic vibrations. They drum on the leaves and the ants get attracted to it. Once the ant comes, they secrete a particular fluid from the back of the abdomen. So you can see the small fluid coming out from the abdomen. So the ant, once it feeds on this fluid, the neurochemistry of the ant changes. So instead of killing the caterpillar, it will start to protect it. So it actually interferes with the serotonin dopaminergic pathways. So recently we have done a project. We have analyzed the secretion and the findings are coming up. So we have done microanalysis using chromatography techniques and spectrography. So this is the results are just coming up. So this butterfly is called the oak blue, and the butterfly always lays eggs on plants which are this ant colony. So this is called a symbiosis or mutualism, where the ants get nourishment and the butterflies get protection. This is an example of another symbiosis where if you have a pea plant, you'll be seeing this. This is the yellow crazy ant. In Malayalam, you call it as the chonan. So this is attending to another butterfly larva. So the larva is protected by the ant. Living as an ant is dangerous. See, you look at this picture, you might think that it is an ant. In fact, it is not. This is a spider which has mimicked an ant. If you look at the legs, the spiders usually have 8 legs. And ants is an insect, so ants have 6 legs. So what the spider does is, it will mimic the front legs as, or maybe just make it appear like an antennae. So the 6 legs are there and it appears like an antennae, and it camouflages itself in the ant colony and goes about killing and eating the ants. It also does one more thing. Once it kills the ant, it takes up the hydrocarbon shell or the chemicals which are used by ants to recognize each other and smears it on its body. So the ants will not be able to delineate his friend from the foe. It will think that it's another ant, it will go closer and it will get devoured. That is how it happens. It's called ant mimicking spider or Myrm arachne. Each of the ant colony around your house will have at least 2 or 3 species of this ant mimicking spider. This is another example of ant mimicking spider, Myrma plata. If you have a weaver ant colony, just go near it and you'll see small, tiny spiders which exactly mimic the ants. They are in fact spiders. See, they have 8 legs. The 2 legs are modified to form, or actually modified to mimic the antennae of the ant. There are certain wasps that actually predate on ants as well. So what the wasp does it actually lays eggs on small leaves where the ants forage. The eggs of the wasp actually get stuck to the leaf and also the leg of the ant. Once the ant goes to its colony, the egg hatches and the larva of the wasp comes out. The wasp larva feeds on the ant pupae and larvae and pupates and comes out as the wasp. This is called a eukaryotic wasp, and it's a parasitic wasp on ant colonies. Very interesting group of wasps. Coming to ant studies in Kerala, so just like in all groups of biodiversity or natural history, this was started by amateur naturalists from British era. So the earlier naturalists were Jerdon, who was actually a doctor, who was stationed in Madras. Then H.S. Ferguson, who happened to be a planter in the Travancore region in 1888. Then Rotten and Ingleby, a lot of Britishers and people who came to South India during the colonial times contributed to ant studies, just like butterflies and ornaments. There are certain works done by British Museum and occasional papers which mention Kerala in the later part. Ant diversity in Kerala is very rich. So the present estimate is around 278 species according to published literature. But then our personal estimates are around 400 species. We already discovered around 350 species from the state. So what we have found is for every 4 days you spend in Western Ghats, you will encounter at least 1 new species of ant. Come to statistics in Kerala and India. India almost has some 828 species, Kerala 264 species, and these are the genera which are represented. Coming to diversity, state-wise, you can see that wherever research have done extensively, the number of species are high. Otherwise, it's low. That doesn't mean that the numbers are low in Kerala or Sikkim, but then the studies were really less. That's the reason. Very interesting slide. So if you look at this picture, I've given 4 pictures of ant. So these ants are very familiar to us. But in fact, these are the ones which are not our ants. These are all invasive ants. They came to us during different parts of colonization, different times of colonization. So Acropolis gracilipus is in Malayalam you call chonanurum, or the yellow crazy ant. This is an invasive species from Southeast Asia. Monomore farnois in Malayalam you call as neyurumbu. It's a very common species inside your kitchen. They can give you a nasty bite. It's an invasive ant from Egypt or Africa, Pharaoh's ant. Solenopsis geminata is the one that gives you a bite when you go to your lawn, when you walk on the lawn. That is the Solenopsis geminata. It's an ant, invasive ant. It's called red fire ant from South America. Pyrotrachina longicornis is Caringianum, or the ant which has a myth associated with it. People say that if it comes inside your houses during rain, you will get a lot of money. So these are all invasive. These are not actually our Indian species. These are all invasive. So in fact, around 24 species in India are invasive. And most of the ants, so if you look at around your house, you will see at least 30-40 species. Of them, around 20 are invasive, not even our ants. Coming to basic taxonomy, I'll just quickly go through it because not by much interesting to you, but then I'll quickly tell you it has a mandible or mouth part, then the eyes. Some ants are blind even, they don't have eyes. Then the head, then the thorax, then the abdomen, and the connecting part called petiole. So that is a very critical area, petiole. This is how we do taxonomy of ant. We look at the petiole and look at how many segments it has and then go about doing the taxonomy. Taxonomy is a classification of ants, and how we place it and name it. This is a close-up of the head of the ant. You can see the antennae, which are segmented. The eyes, these are actually compound eyes. So individual, the small white things you see are individual lenses called ommatidia. So it has a compound eye, lots of lenses, compound eye. It has a huge mouth part with tooth. This is the queen ant, which has a large thorax. It is a winged ant. Generally, queens and males are winged, and they have huge, large thorax. So this is the male ant. You can look at the male ant. He has a large thorax, but the head part is reduced and rudimentary. The only purpose of this male ant is to mate and die. So he doesn't have mouth parts. The mouth parts are rudimentary. The abdomen is developed with the mating part. This is the queen. And in addition to the compound eye, she also has ocelli. Ocelli are just light receptors on the top of the head. There are certain subfamilies of ant. These are the subfamilies represented in Kerala, generally in India. We'll quickly go through each subfamily. Most of the ants you might have seen them. This is the key to subfamily. I told you about the node. How many segments the node has, that is how we classify 1 or 2 nodes. So this has 1 node, this has 2 nodes. That's how we go about classification. That's not very important. And we'll just go through the subfamilies. So these are what we known as doorline ants. Doorline ants are otherwise known as army ants. So these are true army ants. They live underground. So if you look at the color, there's a general scheme or general pattern. They are blind. They are reddish brown or brown. They have segmented body. They live underground. They move as colonies or huge armies underground through underground tunnels. This is doorless or the blind army ant. It's a huge ant. It lives in subterranean tunnels or nests. This is a diurnal blind army ant. See, look at this head. It doesn't have eyes. But see how formidable these are. So they have captured a big ant. These are all blind ants. This ant is having eyes. It's a huge ant. They have subdued it. It's just like a group of humans going barehanded and trying to capture an elephant. So these guys have managed to do this. So see how invasive these guys are. Usaraya is a very interesting ant. We call it the clonal raider ant. So cloning was not actually discovered by humans, but it existed in the ant world many millions of years ago. So this ant can practically clone herself to how many numbers she wants. That's how it works. This is the clonal raider ant or Usaraya. Very tiny ant, just 1 or 2 millimeters, and she is blind. This is Eusphinctus, a very rare species. You find them in hill stations in South India. Come to second family. This ant you might remember during your school days. You might have used this ant to sting your colleagues. This is the Katturumbu in Malayalam. So these guys can give you a nasty sting, ponorines. This is a very interesting ant. Very interesting ant in the sense it is intelligent. So if you look at this ant, the ant will directly look upon you. So this ant is called the jumping ant for a reason. It captures insects like crickets and spiders. So these prey item also jumps. So in order to catch them, the ant jumps. If you look at the ant or touch it, it'll just jump. It's called jumping ant. It's a very interesting species, endemic species in hills of South India. It's a huge species. It can give you a nice sting. Harpe gnathos saltator. Harpe means the harp, the musical instrument. The mandibles are shaped like the musical instrument harp. Gnathos means the jaw. Harpe gnathos. Enochetus is a trap jaw, and you can see the jaw. So there are trigger hairs on this jaw. So once the trigger hairs are touched, it will shut close with huge speed. That is the Enochetus or the trap jaw ant, also known as the lesser trap jaw ant. A very common species in your homesteads. Centromyrmex is another interesting genus. This ant is blind and lives inside termite colonies. She blindly lives there and feeds on termites. The termites will try to push her out, but then they can't because of the numerous hairs and spines she has on the foot. Diacama is the ubiquitous Katturumbu, which gives you a good sting. Diacama. Ectomyrmex is also otherwise known as Katturumbu. It's another species. It's generally rare. Hyperponera is one of the commonest ponerines you see in Kerala and this part of the world. It's a tiny ant, just 2 or 3 millimeters. Inside wood, you will find them. Leptogenus is the army ant. They are everywhere inside the forest. These are one of the ants which can make a sound. If you go near the ant colony, it will make a rustling, low note sound. So just like humans, they walk in long army marches and lines. There are soldiers that guard the lines and they move about from one place to another. They don't have any permanent colony. This is a guarding ant, Leptogenus, or the army ant. They give you a nasty sting, really, really nasty sting. This is a Leptogenus colony, a lot of pupae. It's a Musaponera, another species of army ant. Odontomachus is another interesting species, which also jumps. It is a very common species in Kerala. You look at the jaws. This is the jaw, which has been extended to around 90 degrees. There are trigger hairs. So once the prey touches the trigger hair, this jaws shut close with huge speed. One of the fastest movements in insect world. This is the greater trapjaw ant or Odontomachus. Again, you can see a magnified view of the head. These are the trigger hairs. These are the jaws. You can see the compound eyes as well. The greater trapjaw ant, a very common species in southern India. Odontoponera was a species which was thought to be found only in the Himalayas. Then we discovered them from Silent Valley National Park. So this is Odontoponera. Platytheria, most of the ants didn't have a common name. So we try to give them common names as well. We call it smooth ant because there is nothing to particularly mention about the sculpture of the ant. So we call it as the smooth ant or Platytheria. Ponera is a species which was said to be found only in Himachal Pradesh. Recently we found them in Agastya Males in southern India. Come to the next subfamily. So once we showed this picture to a school group, and we wanted them to give this ant a particular common name. They all said strawberry ant. So that's how the name stuck, and now it's called the strawberry ant. Leptogenus or the strawberry ant, very interesting group. Come to the next subfamily. These are the Dracula ants. So we'll come to the Dracula ants. These are specialized predators. They feed on centipedes, which are very vicious. So you can think about how a single ant subdues a centipede using a sting. So think about how powerful that sting is. So these are known as Dracolamps for a reason. So during the lean period, what this ant does is it punctures the neck of the larvae and the pupae and drinks the blood. And the colony survives. But then you might think that the larva dies, but it doesn't happen. The larva or the pupae actually comes out as a good shaped ant. So that is why these are known as Dracula ants. You can also look at the mouth parts, just like Dracula, huge tooth and teeth like that. So this is how they survive. That's one of the Dracula ant or stigmaton. The next family is Myrmicine, a very interesting group, and most of the ants you see are Myrmicines. You can see Caribara. You can see its head has 2 horn-like structures. Caribara horny. Catalogus is one of the ants which looks like an armored military vehicle. If you touch this ant, it will roll itself into a ball. And this all serrations and the spines will give it protection. Once the danger passes by, it just goes on for its routine business. This is otherwise known as the armored ant or Catalogus. Chromatogaster is a very interesting ant. So you might have heard about the rufous woodpecker, which actually nests inside nests of Chromatogaster ants. They can give you very nice, nasty sting, but then it doesn't do any harm to the birds, and they survive inside actually thrive inside the colony of Chromatogaster ants. Myrna plus, it didn't have a name in Malayalam. We named it as Mudirum because a lot of hairs you see on the ant. Silky shield ant. That's the English name of Myrna plus. Silky shield ant. Messer are the harvester ants, which I told you about in the initial part of the presentation. They live in grasslands, messer or the harvester ants. Monomorium is a ubiquitous species that gives you a nasty bite. They are everywhere inside your kitchen, inside your garments, everywhere. They give you nasty bites. So they have one of the colonies I found inside my camera, and my camera was destroyed. They also love to eat rubber. Myrmicinia was one of the ants which didn't have a common name. So looking at the pattern, we named it as a fingerprint ant. There are 2 or 3 species described from Kerala, Myrmicinia urbani, Vidya, and all the species. So Vidya is a species discovered from Silent Valley National Park. We mounted an expedition to find the species. We just could see one of the individuals. In 2017, we described an ant called Tyrannomyrmex. So this ant was described from Periyar Tiger Reserve. Tyrannomyrmex is a very rare genus. Tyran means terror ant. Myrmex means ant. So it's called a little terror ant, or Ali's little terror ant. So Ali is Mushtaq Ali, who happens to be our mentor. So he trained us into ants. So we named the species after Dr. Mushtaq Ali, and he named it as Tyrannomyrmex Ali. There are only 4 species of Tyrannomyrmex in the world, and this is the 4th one. Myrmicaria is a very common ant. We see them in the forest. At any tree root, you'll see them. In Malayalam, people call it Koonanurum. A lot of poets have described about Koonanurum, but nobody has seen it. This is the Myrmicaria, or the hunchback ant. Paratopila is a species which is thought to be seen only in Sri Lanka. Then they are all common in Kerala as well. Paratopila. Fidol is a group of workers that is cutting a piece of ladu, which had actually fallen down during one of our expeditions. So just like humans, these huge-headed workers, these are the soldiers. These guys are lazy. They don't usually come out from the nest. So what the foraging worker does is, so she has only small mouth parts. She cannot actually cut down the huge food into small pieces. So what she does is, she cuts out a small piece and takes it to the colony and feeds to the larger worker. So these lazy guys, once they get the taste of this, they come out and then they cut it into pieces, and so that the smaller ones can carry it down to the colonies. This is Fidol. Rhophalomastix is a tiny ant that lives inside live tree bark, for example, mango trees. They never come out from the tree nests. This is Solenopsis that gives you a good bite. They are very common in homesteads in Kerala. So you'll find them biting you on your legs. So it can give you a nasty itch for about 2 or 3 weeks. Solenopsis, or the fire ant. So South American species, it's invasive. Stumigenus is a very small ant which is found in leaf litter and soil. So if you touch them, they'll feign death, and they lie there still for many minutes, and then only when the danger passes, they'll move on. They also have a trigger hair mechanism for catching their prey. Tetramorim is a common ubiquitous ant seen all around India. The next family is Dolichoderines, or these are the order ants. This is Dolichoderus, beaver ant. You can see them in the trees and gardens, very common in India. This is Tapetum, or the ghost ant, very tiny ant. They can give you a feel of ant crawling on your body, but you cannot see them because they are very tiny. Technomyrmex is another species. You see them commonly in your homes and gardens. Technomyrmex albipus. Now this small ant is attending to a scale insect. This is Proceratinae. You get that there's a burglar's picture in the slide. So this ant is actually a predator on eggs of other ants as well as spiders. So she has a small vaulted abdomen. So there's a small pouch in the abdomen where she carries or hides the eggs which she has harvested from other groups. So that quickly she carries her to the home. That is how they work. This is the Proceratinae, or Discotheria species. These are one of the smallest ants you see in our part of the world. This is Leptanilae. They are just really small. The size will be around 1 millimeter. And if you happen to pass your breath on them, they'll just fly off. That is how tiny they are. So we found a colony in Periyar Tiger Reserve. These are blind. They are very tiny and blind. Leptanilla. The next family are the leaf border ants, otherwise known as Pseudomyrmicinae. Look at the eyes. These are huge compared to the size of the head. So they are daylight foragers. They'll be constantly seen on the edges of leaves. Look at this ant. So you can see them very bright colored, huge eyes, just like a Harley Davidson bike. They're scientifically known as Tetraponera, or the leaf border ants. If you handle them, they can produce an interesting smell. Tetraponera rufo-nigra. It's a very common ant which can give you a good sting, seen all over India. Tetraponera rufo-nigra. Rufo means red, nigra means black. You can see the mimicry here. The top picture shows Tetraponera rufo-nigra, and the bottom picture is another Myrmaracinae, or the ant mimicking spider, which happens to live alongside the species. So the spider will be constantly feeding on this ant. Coming to the last family, this is Formicinae, one of the commonest group. This is the Acropiga. See, look at the ant, the size and the color. They mimic termites. They live underground. You might be thinking about the social evil called dowry system. So it was prevalent amongst ant colonies millions of years ago before humans invented it. So look at this ant, the queen. She has a huge aphid between her mouth part. That is called Xenococcus annandale. It's a kind of aphid. So what this ant does is, the colony lives underground. They are actually concentrated around certain tree roots. So the ants will be getting nourishment from aphids which are stuck to the tree roots. So once the colony matures, the gravid female will take out the largest of the aphid and flies off. So there are numerous queens which come out, and then they all take the aphids. The queen with the largest gravid aphid will be mated by males. And that is how the colony works. So this is the dowry ant, the Acropolis queen with the dowry. Acropolis is an invasive ant. It's otherwise one of the yellow crazy ants seen all over India. One interesting fact about the species, wherever you see this species, there are low numbers of our indigenous species. So this is a very invasive exotic ant. Camponotus is the honey ant. So they don't give you a bite. Camponotus, Rufogloccus, and Syricus, they are very common. Practically one of the most commonest ants you see in India. Camponotus species, Camponotus irritans. So if you go to your kitchen at night, you'll see this ant crawling all over the place. They don't come out during the day. This is Camponotus irritans. Lepisiota is a species seen in grasslands and forests. Very interesting ant called Myrmotras. So look at the mandible. So the ant has an ability to extend the mandible to around 270 degrees behind his head. And it also has a trap jaw mechanism. It's a daylight predator. Look at the eyes, the compare size of the eyes with the head. Huge eyes and small head. So it's a daylight predator, and it has a trap jaw mechanism as well. In Malayalam, it didn't have a name. We call it Valurumb. Val means sword. Island area is an invasive species. There are numerous indigenous species as well, very common inside your houses. Oecophila, very common and very familiar to you. Nira, or your the weaver ant. Paratrachina is an invasive species. So people have a myth associated with this species that it will bring good luck and money. But in fact, it's an invasive species. And the interesting group of formicides known as Polyrhachis. Poly means multiple. Arachis means horns or thorns. So this ant has multiple thorns or horns on the vulnerable part of the body, like for example, the abdomen and the neck. So if the predator comes, this will actually roll into a ball-like structure, and this thorns will give you the protection. This is Polyrhachis bingami. If you touch the ant will produce a particular odor. In this case, it resembles naphthalene. This Polyrhachis exorcita, it has a secretion which resembles jasmine. So this guy, Polyrhachis hypermens, resembles acetone. So numerous species have numerous odors. So once you handle the ant, your hand will smell of these chemicals. One of the ways you can find out what species they are. So look at this ant. She is ready to spray from the acid gland from the abdomen into the predator's eyes. So this is Hypomenes, or the Ceylon spiny ant. Polyrhachis thrinax. So these guys are very common in our gardens. Polyrhachis rotoni, forest species. Polyrhachis gracilla, a very beautiful species of spiny ant you see in forests. Polyrhachis rastrata, another interesting species with red and white legs. Polyrhachis tibialis is another common species you see around your houses. Polyrhachis tibialis. This is the very interesting ant which I showed you. This is Polyrhachis punctinata fergusoni, or Ferguson's spiny ant, a common species in southern part of India. These are forest species. Interesting. Polyrhachis sissa, because of the incision or the small gap in the thorax. Polyrhachis sissa. Polyrhachis eludata, or the golden spiny ant. You look at the hairs; these are practically golden. If you go to any forest in southern India, you will see this ant. These are huge ants, and they are really beautiful. Polyrhachis eludata, or the golden spiny ant. See, interestingly, the amount of data which we have on ants are very, very, very meager. There are not good books about ants of India or species seen in our part of the world. Field methodology is not standardized. Species descriptions generally by Indian authors are very subjective. So there are a lot of issues with ant studies in Kerala, or rather India. So what to do? See, basically, people should get interested in these smaller creatures, because these are the things which are going to drive the world, because there are a lot of interesting things about them. For example, the neurochemicals you see, the way they forage, how they solve the problem like public transport, the shortest route, all this stuff. They are very interesting. There are certain online resources for people who are interested to read about them further. Anweb.com, Anwiki. I would say Anwiki would be one of the interesting sites which should follow. You can give all the basic ideas about ants. Then there are Facebook groups, Ants of Kerala, Ants of India, which can give you interesting insights. There are certain books. People in India, we can actually start with On Trail with Ants. It's a good book, handbook of ants of peninsular India. It was published by Ajay Narendra and Sunil Kumar. I particularly don't know if it is still existing or is out of print, but then it's a really nice book. People should actually try and read it. Then we had a small book in Malayalam, authored by Manoj and me, by Bhasha Institute. Very small book, around 30 species we have done on this. And we are also coming in with a field guide to ants of Kerala, around 100 species. Then The Naturist by E.O. Wilson is another interesting book. So if you want to go more scientifically, you should refer a much more interesting book like The Fauna of British India, Bingham. In 1903, he published a companion of ants of India. Actually, after that work, nobody has done a compilation of any such things in India. So Fauna of British India is an interesting book, really taxonomic and updated. They need to be updated. Telling about TNHS, we established in 2010. We established a registered NGO, Societies Act. So we do a lot of work like surveys and assessment biodiversity. So one of the surveys we did in Muna, 125, 126 people attended. So probably we have conducted the first dragonfly surveys in India. One of the pioneered in the butterfly surveys in all parts of southern India. A lot of stuff we have done. At least 15, 16 species, including odonate cicadas, ants, butterflies we have discovered. In 2015, we introduced a new group called TARG. TARG actually stands for TNHS and Research Group. So there are people who in TNHS who are interested in studying ants only. So we put out a group for them. So they do all this ant workshops and taxonomy, and there's trails, then expeditions to rediscover stuff. So this is how they work. This is the TARG group. So this person sitting inside in the middle of the student is Mushtaq Ali, our mentor. He passed away last year. He was based in Bangalore. So we named the species Taranamyrmex after him. So this is about TARG. So one interesting thing about ants is that unlike birds and butterflies, which fly to you, for ants, for studying ants, you should go to them. You should stoop down. You should go to their level and study. You go. See, it is not very easy to study ants, unlike birds and butterflies. But then it is rewarding. So as I told you, if you go to field for at least 4 days, you'll get at least one new species. These are our contacts, our phone numbers. We are available on Facebook. We are available on WhatsApp as well. So if you have any questions or queries, you can ask me. Or if you have any doubt later on, you can contact us on this. We are coming to the end of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kalesh. You can stop sharing the screen now. Thank you, Kalesh, for that very detailed and very interesting talk on ants. And I'm sure none of us knew that there were so many species of ants and that different types of ants that we encounter almost every day. So now let us go on to the interactions. Bhuvneshwari, can you see if there are any questions in the chat box? Or if anybody wants to ask a question, please unmute yourself and ask. You are muted, Bhuvneshwari, you are muted.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Aruna Pradhan has written that her 4-year-old grandson is forever watching and following insects and birds. And she hopes that her grandson follows your footsteps, Dr. Kalesh. Similarly, Usha Joseph also says her grandson, who is in the 7th standard, also is very much interested in ants, spiders, centipedes, etc. He observes ants very closely. He never allows us to kill the plants, ants, spiders, etc. I want to send him this video. Yeah, we will be sharing that video. And of course, this is me. I actually never thought that there is so much to know about ants when the thing began, But so minutely you have gone into the species and so many varieties, so many species are there. Of course, that's really brilliant. And actually, very interesting to know they are female-dominated species. Then, of course, there is that division of labor. All these things were, when you are talking about cultivators, mushroom cultivators, it was really the way you are saying, we could feel how close you are to the subject and how they protect plants and caterpillars. We always see these ants on the plants, and then we make out that there are aphids on it, and then we spray the whatever, pesticide or whatever. But I think they protect, isn't it? I have this doubt. The plant, is it the plant? Is it good for the plants, the ants?
Bad for the plants. It is good for the ants. So the ants are the ones which protect these aphids, and they carry them from one plant to another.
So you don't mind if we kill them, huh?
Plants are invasive, so I don't mind. These are not our native species. Whatever you see, generally, attending to aphids are all invasives.
Then about this cloning, dowry ants. Also, one thing was very interesting, that the lazy ants, how they make the others work by giving good food and all. These are all very interesting to this thing. Now, I think these people, if they are there, they can, Indrani Sengupta ji says, most unusual webinar with so much unknown information. Thank you. Kalyani ji, you are there. Of course, you can, I don't have to read it out. Thank you for such an informative presentation. As Bhuvaneshwari said, we never knew there are so many varieties and types of ants. Having listened to you, now I feel ants are best resource managers and strategic labor force. Yes.
People have used them to solve a lot of problems, traffic issues, game theory, a lot of stuff. Resource management, actually, they have studied ants as how they solve this.
Kalyani ji, you would like to say something? She wanted to know. Yeah.
Yeah, very interesting. Very, very interesting actually about the ant's life. I never knew. And in fact, I didn't write, but the cloning part is something which is, I never heard of about, like, ants doing the cloning. That's very interesting. But I just wanted to know, what is the average lifespan of ants?
So generally, as I told you during the presentation, we should not look at a single ant as an organism. So you have to look at the colony. So basically, the colony means the queen. So if you, there are a lot of ants that live, queens, which are particularly live for decades, 3, 4. There are certain ants which die in a year. So it is a variable thing. It's a variable thing.
Okay. Right. And so does it also depend on the type of ant?
Yes, it does. It does depend upon the type of.
Okay. And also, I was just wondering, I put there in the chat box also, are the termites also one type of ants?
No, they are a different group. They are not related to ants. They look similar because of convergent evolution and stuff, because they are issues in the habitat, but then they are very different. Not at all related.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. You have really made it very, very interesting. I mean, I don't think any of us gave so much of importance to an ant's life, but your talk has really made us very interesting. And as Bhuvaneshwari said, probably next time when we look at an ant, we will try to sort of think whether it is a Kattarumbu or the Technomax or so many other names you mentioned. We'll try to remember and do that. Thank you so much.
As I told you earlier, before the meeting started, that particular type of ant, I could not find it in this presentation. So next time I go, I will photograph it and send it to you. Because it was a forest area, so I could not, a sarpakav. It was a sarpakav, So I did not carry the mobile phone. So I'll photograph it and send it to you, and would like to know what it is.
There are Facebook groups, as I told in the presentation. If you just take a picture on mobile phone and share from the group, within seconds you'll get the identification.
Okay. Thank you.
And I would like to ask one question, Kalesh. See, often we see that ants get separated from the group. Like, you brush against something and they climb onto your clothes and you walk away and then you just brush it off your clothes. So they go very far. Are they ever reunited with the group?
They can get reunited only if they come across the pheromone trails from the colony. Otherwise, they will die. They cannot survive on their own.
On their own, they cannot survive.
They cannot survive. It all depends upon the colony. They have to go back. They have to home in to survive. So I told you about the another communication, visual communication. So there are certain ants which can home in using visual cues. So in the ant colony, they will be decorating the colony with pieces of vegetation like flowers, leaves. So when in the forest floor, sometimes this pheromone track doesn't work. So they have to look at the sun, position themselves, and look at this visual cues to go back to their colony. So there are numerous ways they go back, but then generally when an ant gets separated from their colony and gets into another colony's territory. See, if you look at the forest floor, you'll think that they are silent and in peace and everything, but it's not really. It's a world of war. It's a dynamic equilibrium. There are colonies of ants that constantly fight for territories. It's a dynamic equilibrium. They fight with every colony, every other species, even the same species, different colonies, and they'll be vying for it for the territory. So if an ant goes astray and gets into another colony, it is doomed.
Oh, I see. And it's very interesting to know how the species nourish each other and also how they devour each other, both ways. You were talking about the spiders, how they disguise themselves as ants and go and eat the ants. And then about the ants being used as protection by different plants so that the predators don't attack them. So all these are very interesting points which I didn't know at all. So you have given a very new, fresh perspective to the whole thing.
We have a lot of stories about ants, like how they store for the rainy season and like that. That we are told in the childhood.
If you look at harvester ants, what they do is when the sun is out, they take out the grain from the granaries. They have separate storage for grains. They take them out, dry them. If they see rains coming, they quickly take them inside and seal the colony. Seal the colony so the rain doesn't come inside. So if you look at certain colonies, there are certain rooms where they put the queens. There are other crevices and stuff where they put their youngs, and there are places where they have their food. There's a waste bin even.
Oh. Their palace.
Yes. Yeah, I think, in some ways they are more advanced than humans, maybe. And as you said, thousands of years back, they had already started doing all this. And very organized, I think. Their nests are very well organized and their work is distributed in a very efficient way.
It's order and disorder, actually.
Order and disorder, okay. But how did you get into this? That would be interesting to know.
So if you want to know about my natural history, so basically, I guess it was there in the blood. So I was brought up in Alleppey, in a very remote place in Alleppey, Kuttanad, Upper Kuttanad. So I used to live with this cattle, and I used to be in the farm, in the paddy fields with my grandfather, who happened to be a farmer. So whenever I was a small kid, whenever they wanted to feed me, they used to take me to the cow shed where I used to sit and look at the cows and eat. Otherwise, I won't eat. So it was probably in the blood. Then after 4 or 5 years, they transplanted me to Trivandrum, the semi-metro kind of stuff where I did my schooling. Then I forgot about everything. In, I guess, around 8th or 9th standard, Dad bought me a book, 60 Indian birds. That actually triggered or rekindled the interest. Then I started looking at birds. Then 3 or 4 years, I actually looked at birds only. Then it happened that something in birds got me boring because they're all repetitions. Then I started looking at butterflies and then came across another book called Common Butterflies of India. So looking at the book, I realized that butterflies have common names. So that was something which attracted me. Commander, Lasker, sailors, surgeons, monkey persons, all those names attracted me. Then I started studying butterflies. To complete butterflies, you should know about plants. Then everything around your house finishes, you go out for your expedition, then you go to forest, you see other stuff like reptiles and amphibians, you start to study them. Then slowly you go to the odonats, then cicadas. Ants is interesting because one of my friends who happens to be, I told you about Manoj, so he is a mechanic in KSRTC. He doesn't have any background on zoology, but then he is so passionate that if you go to field with him, he'll say, oh, Anna, this is Ordinamyca similibus. You need not look at the book. That'll be it. That is how passionate this guy is. But then he had his limitations. To help him out in taxonomy, I started studying ants. That is how I got into the field. Then there are parallelisms within human society and ant society which attracts you to it. So once you study ants, you will look at the world in a different perspective. And as a medical teacher, I would also look at in the medical side as well. For example, the Harpaganathos, that jumping ant. So she stores these crickets and spiders in the layers for months without them putrefying. So what she does is she stings them with this neurotoxin. The prey doesn't die. It doesn't putrefy. It gets stupefied. Neuroparalysis. And it just lies there for months. So fresh food for the kids. So as a plastic surgeon, that interests me because that can be used as an alternative Botox. Long-acting stuff. And then if you remember in that, people used to use them as sutures and heads. So a lot of stuff is interesting about ants. And there are even fungicides and antibiotics which you can harvest from ants. There are certain glands on the ant, so especially those living underground. So this metapleural glands. So they have this very interesting secretions which can be used against a lot of fungi and bacteria. So that has medical applications. So there are a lot of interesting stuff. And then recently we analyzed the chemicals which came out from the caterpillar, which changed the serotonin dopamine axis of the ant brain. And instead of protecting the queen, these ants were protecting the caterpillars. So we analyzed it, and the results, the primary results are out. It contains a lot of amines. We are looking at neuroamines and all those stuff. So very interesting group scientifically as well.
Did you get bitten by ants? All these?
All the time. So once we were digging for nests of Harpaganathos. These are huge ants. With a long sting. I've been stung thousands of times, but it is all worth. So I was digging out a nest of Harpaganathos. I probably dug at least 2 meters into the ground. I was getting stung all over. I wanted to see where this colony was going, what was the content of the colony, how many queens are there, and it was very interesting. Army ants will sting you. Everything, stings and bites are all the time field experiences.
Dr. Kalesh.
Yeah, please go on.
Yeah, Dr. Kalesh, it was really very interesting. And just one question, it might make you laugh also, you know. My grandfather used to make us eat ant. Ask me why.
For vitamin C, I guess.
Yeah, because the whole family, all of us, we have very, you know, our sight is like, we all have to wear spectacles, always. So my grandfather used to tell us, eat ant and your eyesight will be better. I don't know how far it is true, but we really used to eat ants religiously. It has that sweet, you know, kind of a flavor. That.
So that's two things that come to my mind when people say they eat ants. So my grandmother used to tell me, so if you find ants in your food, only you'll be eating it. So only if you have good eyesight, you will see the ants. So they'll think that because you are eating the ant, your eyesight was good.
maybe. Oh, your eyesight is better. Yeah, maybe that is it. And then like Valmiki gave us Ramayana, no? Through Valmiki, we know Ramayana. So through you, we know so much about ant today. Thank you so much.
Okay. And the second thing is, there are people who actually eat ants. So if you look at tribes in central India, they'll be making a kind of roti using weaver ant larvae.
Oh.
Yeah, in Thailand, they do that. Bangkok, they fry it like kondatam, you know, they fry it.
Chutney with radans.
There is one question. Are there poisonous ants?
In India, we don't have any ants which can potentially kill a human. But then if you can get a seasonal amount of bite, you can get some allergy or anaphylactic reactions. But in South America, there are ants like bullet ants, which can give you a really poisonous bite. Otherwise, in India, there are no ants which can kill you, as far as we know.
And you think there are a lot more species that remain to be discovered?
Actually, yes. So, see, the published figures for Kerala checklist is around 276 species. So, from the last 5 years, our estimate is already 350 species. So, my guess is around 500 to 600 species. In India, at least 2,000 species.
So, who gives recognition to the species? Suppose you find one and report, then.
So, what we do is we find the species, we describe it, and we submit to a peer-reviewed journal. So this go for a process called peer review. So people who are working on this group, who are experts in particular taxa, they look at it and they evaluate the paper. They give you critical comments. If they think that the species is valid, they accept it, and it goes for international acceptance. That's how it works.
Doctor,
yes.
you could actually, Dr. Usha Nair also, you could actually have this webinar for the younger kids also. And you, Dr. Kalesh, should not go that high-level talk on ants, but come down to their level and tell them about ants. That would be very interesting.
So there are certain kids who had actually attended my class, and they are actually sending me pictures in WhatsApp. They have started keeping ants as pets and studying them. These guys have read so much, they're asking some stuff which even I don't know.
No, Arunaji, that is exactly our intention of organizing this webinar and even the earlier one on birds of the Silent Valley, because we thought the best way to protect the environment, to motivate the children to be careful about the environment and to protect the environment, is to tell them all these fascinating factors about the different species. You know, once they know these fascinating things, they will know how important it is that these have to be preserved and how they are helping us and helping the other animals. So maybe we'll have a series, especially for children. Today also some children have joined from different schools. I hope they find it interesting and we can take it forward. We would like to have on different species and about their lives and how they protect the environment, how each is essential for our lives. Because usually the response is, if you see some ants inside your house or anywhere, you immediately douse it with some powder which is poison or a spray that is poison. So the children are also watching it. So they are not sensitive to that aspect at all. They think that it is a minor thing, that you kill the ants and the menace is gone. But then once you listen to this talk, we know that it is not so, that they are as essential to our lives as anything else. So we hope to make the children and the younger people sensitive to this issue. That is the intention of having these topics in our webinars.
That's really great, Doctor. And we are so आदत के मारे हो गए ना हम लोग, like कोई insect देख लिया तो पकड़ के फेंक दिया ना. Yes. It's so much in us that we tend to kill them. And now these children, the younger ones, they try to protect them. They keep it in a bottle, they feed them and all that. So at least they have that instinct to save them, I think. No, Doctor?
Yes. So we have to promote that instinct. That is what I mean. The children instinctively, they know that these are to be protected. So maybe we can help them stay sensitive and save the environment. If there are no more questions, shall we wind up?
Usha, shall I ask one suggestion?
Please do. Please.
Usha, actually, I wanted to join all my students for this seminar, but unfortunately, they couldn't. But some of the parents are requesting me to conduct a webinar exclusively for school students. Is it okay for Doctor? Or I would like to know that, whether we will organize a webinar like that. Exclusively for students.
Yes, as Arunaji suggested, at a lower level that the children can easily understand and appreciate. We hope to disturb you again, Dr. Kalesh, and ask you to join us for such webinars.
It's fine. I can do that. No issues.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Usha. Thank you.
Thank you, Vijayalakshmi. So, shall we wind up the meeting now? So, Dr. Kalesh, thank you so much for sparing so much time and describing to us in detail. And most of the facts were not known to us. And in fact, didn't even know that there are so many species of ants, and then all with different habits and different lifestyles. And it's very interesting to know the parallels between human lives and lives of ants. I'm sure you will find similar things with butterflies and dragonflies and damselflies also. Thank you so much. And we hope to carry this message on to many, many children and many young people who will learn to appreciate the different species and the need for protecting these species. So thank you. And I thank all the members of AIWC and other people who have joined this webinar. Many students have joined. I thank them specially. This was meant specially for you. And maybe we'll organize one exclusively for students when Dr. Kalesh has time. And next webinar, as usual, we'll be having on the first Friday of July. The topic is not yet finalized, but I hope all of you will join us for the literary and cultural forums webinars. And so thank you, Kalesh. We hope to be in touch with you, and we hope to get more children interested in the work that you do. In fact, you know, your work itself is an inspiration for them. They can learn that so much can be packed into a life. And just having a career that cannot stop you from pursuing a passion. That is another thing I wanted to highlight in this. So thank you so much, and all the best in your career as well as in your passion. We hope you scale bigger heights. We keep reading reports about your work in the newspapers. We hope to see more of it, and we'll be happy to see how well you are doing. Thank you so much. I'm ending the meeting now.